All right. Well, hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. So happy to be here with the good folks of Albright's Raw Pet Food. Hey, everybody. Hey, Josh. Hey, Lee and Karen.
Hey,
Hey guys,
Hello.
good to be here.
Good
Yeah,
morning from Australia, that is. It's probably not morning where everybody else is.
we
no,
we're a few shy of a Brady Bunch scenario here. Dr. B, I don't know if you know what that means, but it's a reference to an old show
Oh,
here in
come
America.
on.
Yeah. Uh, anyway,
I'm older than the Brady Bunch.
well, so am I? No, I don't know if I am. Maybe I am. Um, anyway, we're going to talk about our favorite topic, raw pet food. And so Albright's is a brand we want to talk about how they're doing, what they're doing, how they created their recipes, what they think about the state of the raw business and what they're doing, especially coming into the next year. So welcome everybody, and let's start with you, Lee and Karen.
sure.
Yeah, you're in New Orleans right now.
Correct.
We're in
Yes.
New Orleans, yes, and
New Orleans.
we've been working with Josh and a gentleman named Joe Monahan on our business, and we continue to refine our business from our original recipes. Although our original recipes have stayed pretty true. I think we did a pretty good job originally of setting them up, but we're trying to expand them all the time, make sure they're as healthy as possible for everybody's pets.
Nice. Okay, great. Well, boy, you got that down. You knew exactly how to start.
Well,
And
I'm
Josh,
wondering, Lee, can I ask a question quickly?
yes.
I'll jump in here, Rob. Lee, when did all this happen and how did it get started? That always fascinates me because everybody's got, sometimes people got a totally different story. There's often a lot of similarities in everybody's story, but I'd love to hear your story.
Sure, Mr. Billinghurst, or is it
Dr.
Dr. Billinghurst? We own a
Don't
meat
call me late
market.
for dinner. That's the main thing.
We owned two meat markets, and well, we used to be in a restaurant business, and we did that for years, and we sold those. We opened a couple meat markets, which had delicatessens attached to them, and we had a meat smoking operation. Um, we had people started buying a lot of food for their dogs, whether it be chicken necks, beef hearts, beef kidneys, beef livers.
Pork rib tips. Yeah.
And then some people wanted us to grind it for them, and we started thinking, so we thought, well, we could make our own dog food. Sounded simple enough, which, as you know, it's not simple at all. So I started studying the issue of nutritional uh, dog nutrition, and then it went from there. So we started making it in one of the meat markets and selling it in both our meat markets. We just slowly expanded. And then more and more people, of course, worldwide were finding out that the barf diet is what's healthiest for dogs and what's best for dogs. So we're kind of at the right place at the right time.
So what year was this approximately?
Oh, maybe around 2015, we started making it on a small scale, started ramping it up in 2016. And then we'd sold our meat markets primarily to concentrate on the dog food business and went full time with it then.
Wow.
So I started studying dog nutrition. What I found out there was a thing called AFCO standards, which we all know can be, debatable. But we tried to find out what was healthiest for dogs. So what I did, I tried to figure out what a dog needed for its nutrition, and then I tried to find items that were best for the dog, and not only items that fit into the nutritional profile, but things that were attainable and inexpensive. Because I didn't want to put things in my recipe I couldn't source on a regular basis. So basically, I made a chart what a dog needed, and then on the other side of the chart was where I could source those ingredients worldwide, and that's how we started developing our recipes.
It was important to us to always use human grade ingredients only. And but fortunately, there's a lot of human grade things, chicken backs, chicken necks, beef hearts, beef liver, kidney, that kind of thing that humans are not eating, but they're part of the process of, getting the stuff that humans do eat. So, and those turned out to be all great options for dogs.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the way you went at it. You didn't say, "Oh, I'm just going to." Well, obviously, you started off with fresh foods because that's where you were at.
Yeah.
But so many people, when they want to make a dog food, look for the cheapest and nastiest things, and go from there. And and the other thing I liked about the way you started was the fact that you were looking for things that were easily obtainable and that were relatively cheap and that were not being used. But so isn't that great? Isn't that the great way to start? I love that story. It's fantastic.
Well, we believe also that, the health of our pets can contribute to the health of our planet. So taking food waste and, dogs are scavengers. So giving them these really great low graded cuts that people don't want to eat, or the ugly vegetables, we're really invested in buying the ugly misshapen, fruit and vegetables that people just don't want to buy in a grocery store. We'll grind it down, we'll ferment it and make it into something super nutritious. So our dogs are helping us actually serve this whole idea of food waste and making sure that we're feeding dogs really, really healthy food and also serving the planet. So Josh, you up there, first of all, thank you for not inviting your partner, John, to be the fifth box, because that would be an odd number. So tell us about how you got involved, Josh. Hey there, this is Rob Ryan. I just want to say how much we enjoy making this content for you here. And if you are enjoying it, would you like our video down below? And would you subscribe to our YouTube channel? It sure does help us get discovered by more people like you who need information like this. And also down below in our description, the top link is to our trial pack. We hope you'll order one for your dog so your dog can have fermented superfoods that give them nutrition like they can't find anywhere else. Hard to get nutrients that are easily absorbed. Thank you very much. Now back to the show.
Yeah, so my story is a little bit similar, I think. I mean, if you go back maybe roughly 10 years for me, I kind of became interested very deeply in human nutrition first. So recognizing that, a lot of the, inflammatory diseases, cancer, all of these things are kind of coming from processed foods. And around that same time, that's when a lot of the food documentaries are coming out, right? Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, Forks Over Knives, that kind of thing. And I think what they really honed in on is that we weren't designed to eat a lot of these highly processed foods that we're eating. I think that, Morgan Spurlock in his documentary, with McDonald's demonstrated you could eat those things and survive, but that you certainly wouldn't thrive. So for me, it kind of started with human nutrition. And then when I kind of pair that with my mother, who was a lifelong dog lover, we called her the dog whisperer. I grew up around that environment. I mean, she was the type of person where if she passed a dog on the street, she had to stop, had to talk to it, had to pet it. Sometimes I was even a little bit disgusted by how much she let the dog lick her face and that kind of thing. Right. So I grew up in that environment with animals, and a desire for human nutrition. Well, that really pivoted into dog nutrition when I was looking at getting my most recent pet. I thought to myself, hey, humans aren't supposed to be eating these very highly processed foods. They're not designed to do that. I wonder what a dog is designed to eat. And so I started to get myself educated. I learned a lot from Dr. Billinghurst, Dr. Karen Becker, Dr. Connor Brady, some of the names in the industry. And what I kind of came across was, I think the term biologically appropriate, what that means to me is pairing a diet with a dog's biology, right? Understanding the biology, understanding the dog, lacks things like salivary amylase, for instance, which would suggest that, shouldn't be eating, a high carbohydrate diet or a high starch diet. And so to me, starting to learn those things, and doing some research in raw dog food, I came across the Albrights, looked at they had a very short, natural list of ingredients in their recipes, and then kind of reached out to them, found out their food would be what I thought ideal for my pet, started feeding that to my pet, and then found out that they were looking at maybe moving out of the day-to-day business, and retiring down to beautiful New Orleans. And so, I said, hey, this is something I think I could really become passionate about. Yep. Grew up in an environment where animals were, very much loved. My dog passed away growing up at a fairly early age. The dog I have now is a golden retriever, which we know, the life expectancy in golden retrievers has dropped significantly since the 60s. So this is something that I said, hey, I think it'd be fun to be part of from a business perspective, but something that I could really be passionate about. And I think could be kind of a purpose in helping dogs and pets across the country. So About a year and a half ago, my business partner Joe and I, we kind of stepped in and took over the day-to-day stuff from Lee and Karen. And while they certainly, we work very closely with them on a lot of these new developing recipes and that kind of thing, have tried to take this now to the next level. We've the stated company goal is to increase collective dog longevity by 100,000 years. And that's kind of our mission and purpose is to reach dogs and hopefully extend, their life by maybe a year or two each. So something we're very passionate about, something that, I'm very excited to be part of, something that I think the Albrights is doing very well. No synthetics, no fillers, very low starch product. I think follows closely the ratios that, Dr. Billinghurst would recommend with the ingredients. And so, something that I think is, very exciting and great to be part of.
That's great. I'm sorry. Did I said your partner's name was John. It's Joe.
It's Joe. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Joe. But I'm so glad you didn't bring Joe for the 5th of box. So you're golden. Dr. B is here, but I'll just say that he talks a lot about bones being a critical part of a dog's diet. They don't get enough of it, and they're you're probably referring to the high cancer rates in Goldens, much like a lot of breeds. And then bones could be anti-cancerous. Dr. B, you want to go at that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I think if I can just step aside from, I'm going to make one comment that doesn't relate to that question. We're feeding dogs kidneys and livers and hearts and all that, and we should be feeding them to humans as well. Now, I'll just put that aside for a moment. Bones, dogs, cancer. I think it's very important even if you're selling a dog food, to encourage parents to feed some bones as well, just raw meaty bones as well. Now the dog food is great, but the more variety we can get into that food for the dog, and I think it also illustrates a commitment to their health as much as it is to the bottom line of the business. Now, the bottom line of any business is absolutely critical, because if you're not making money, then you can't produce this food for the people and the dogs who need it. That's number one.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. So, but the other thing is, part of what you do is got to be education, I believe. And I suspect that's where you're headed, like what I can see from most companies that are really invested in and you said it, Josh. You want to extend their life, and I'm going to add, and I know you meant this because there could be any other way. You also want to extend their health span as well as their lifespan. And I reckon you're going to do it more than 2 or 3 years. I'm going to divert a bit again here. When I was in the States years ago lecturing to people, they were telling me about their Great Danes who were living to 17 or 18 years before they called it quits. And they said, goodbye, our time is up. Now, if you look today, 9, 10, 11, if you're lucky. And these people were feeding raw and had been doing it for several generations. But anyway, I digressed. Bones. On the outside of bones is cartilage. On the ends of big bones, or on very young animals, of course, before they get mineralized, it is cartilage. And I've told this story before, but I'll say it again. When I first discovered that most of the animals for me that were living longest had a diet based on raw meaty bones, I realized fundamentally that meant that the form of calcium and phosphorus for young dogs was very important, and that was important, and that the bones actually contained a lot of elements that they required. It was almost, when I looked at it, it was almost a complete and balanced diet in and of itself. But then I noticed there was this thing called cartilage. Now, of course, being a vet, I knew what cartilage was, but what I didn't know then, and I said to myself, I'm going to find out more about bones as time goes by, why they're so important. Because I had noticed, for example, that dogs that ate a lot of bones rarely got cancer, and they lived very long, healthy lives. And I thought, and that's why I called the first book "Give Your Dog a Bone." Anyway, I digress again. But the cartilage, what was it about cartilage? I finally learned that it has this property. It's anti-angiogenic. Now, if you look at cartilage, there's no blood vessels in it. is completely free of blood vessels. So it actually contains properties that prevent the growth of blood vessels. And joy of cartilage is that it prevents the growth of blood vessels within cancer. So when a cancer tries to grow, it can't if the dog is eating lots of cancer. And this turned out to be a primary reason, not the only reason, but a primary reason why bones were so important. And that's why I really do encourage people who are making dog food and doing a brilliant job like you're doing, to also encourage people to have the courage, encouraged to have the courage to feed bones. And it does take a lot of courage for a lot of people to do that. I mean, in Australia, where we've been doing it for, well, since the year dot, not so much today, of course, because we've been moulded by our veterinarians as a group of dog lovers and dog owners not to feed bones, but we've always fed it in Australia, well, up until recently. I say recently, I mean 20 or 30 years ago now, because of the influx of processed dog food and the advertising behind it. But when we did that, our dogs lived long and healthy lives and were relatively free of cancer. If the cancer did turn up, it was later in life, and it was relatively benign, and it was a manageable disease, not like today where we feed it with the terrible food full of carbs that we, and other things, other problems that we feed to dogs today. So that's my answer, Rob. I've gone on a bit.
No, great. No, and you know, Karen, you were talking about chicken backs. I remember, for example. Yeah. So you're taking those and you're grinding them in your chicken formula, for example. So, Josh, how much, and Lee, Karen, whoever wants to chime in, how much bone do you have in there for your say chicken mix? And we could talk about the other formulas too.
Yeah, so holistically across the recipes, it's anywhere from roughly 7 to 12% bone in our recipes, and that's recipe dependent. We looked really closely at all the nutrition, the full nutrition profiles on all of them, and in some instances, if we're using more heart in a particular recipe, there's it's kind of skewed towards phosphorus, and so we've used like eggshell, as an example, to kind of make up for some of that calcium content. But we try to use bone because we recognize the importance of bone. Again, I think the Albrights, when they were, when we first introduced them to them, biologically appropriate raw food, Dr. Billinghurst's term was a big part of that. And so I think they recognized that bone content was important based on some of the ratios that he's recommended. So it varies from recipe to recipe, of course. And we actually have we do a couple of things. So we have a bone grinder at the facility. So we do a lot of grinding of our own bones. And then we also have kind of a treat line that does femur bones and knuckle bones that we also sell, recognizing again the importance of having some of those. They're not quite as meaty, of course, as you'd want, but certainly you still get the minerals and some of the bone content that you'd hope for. And my pup, she gets at least a couple of those every week. Again, recognizing the importance.
Incidentally, in our meat markets, that was one of the first dog oriented thing that we sold. People just wanted the femur bones for their pups for treats, and so we already had that basis.
In our first couple of years in business and making our dog food at our meat markets, we did not have the ability to grind up bones, and we knew we needed more bones in our recipe, as Dr. Billinghurst has pointed out. We didn't have a way of getting it. Only when we expanded, we could afford some bigger equipment to grind up bones, because it takes a rather large grinder to grind up bones. Yeah. Once we had our meat market,
but even from the beginning, we were using chicken necks in there because those grind easily.
They're softer.
And of course, when you gave when you sold those big femur bones as treats for the pup, you were doing a really great service to that pup. All that cartilage that they're chewing off the ends of them is helping their joints and also setting them up to be cancer-free in later life. So really, it's quite often these things we just naturally do because we realize instinctively they're the right thing. And dogs tell you that they want bones. They know it. When we do that, we fulfill all sorts of nutritional benefits for the animal in question without knowing it. And that's the joy of feeding real food. You're actually providing lots more nutrients than you ever realize compared to, say, one of these synthetic industrial foods.
And what we learned too about giving the femur bones to the dogs, especially puppies, they were less likely to eat your furniture.
And they were tired.
But the downside of the bones, though, as pet owners, we know, is that you can really stub your toe on those things when they're out laying around on the ground.
Well, they're also really, it may even be equal in value to what Dr. B talked about, the psychological benefits, the building of confidence, the instinctual drive, all of the brain chemicals that come about because they're tapping into their innate, animal sense that people, people get weird about this because they think that, well, kibble is like our food. I don't want my dog acting like an animal.
Right.
Newsflash, And so what we're doing when we talk about, Josh brought up biologically appropriate, and I like that term, and I also like species appropriate because it also just lets us know, or some people like ancestral, but species appropriate is like, look, we want humans to eat like humans. We want dogs to eat like dogs, cats to eat like cats, birds to eat, on and on and on. And that is how they will be their healthiest, happiest selves. So Josh, you were going to chime into, I think, something on probably the bone end.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's pretty interesting. And, Dr. Billinghurst obviously knows quite a bit more about this than I do, but the interplay between certain, minerals and vitamins too, right, that you would be getting from the bone. So we recently had a customer who came to us and the dog was feeding, I think, a kibble. The dog had really bad cracked nose, right? And so what they determined there was that dog was having a zinc deficiency, but that was really due because of a magnesium deficiency, because magnesium helps the pup absorb some of those other vitamins and minerals. So it came over to our food and it resolved itself in about a month and a half. And I think it's, important to recognize that sometimes in these synthetic forms, they don't quite interplay as well as they would when they're eating an ancestral diet.
I'm glad you said that, Josh, because this is the crux of the matter with real food. There are homeostatic mechanisms that have been developed over literally millions of years. This is what the body is designed to interface with and use, pull out what it needs, discard what it doesn't need, and even if there's only a small amount of what it does need, it'll pull it all out and use it. And it also stores this sort of thing so that, again, another function of real food is that every meal does not have to be complete and balanced because there's so much storage and so much redundancy within the body that the body is actually set up to live in times of difficulty and stress and missing foods. And in fact, more and more as we look at that and understand it, the more stress, not to the point of starvation, but the more stress of the right kind, which includes hunger stress and periods of fasting, the more we can do that to imitate what went on over evolutionary time, that the body actually expects, the stronger that body becomes and the longer it lives and the healthier it becomes. So there is no question that making every meal, and I know this is what we have to do in a commercial sense, and it's so much better than not, but if we can add some variation to that diet. So I think on your website you are feeding some things that are not so-called complete and balanced that they can start. And tripe, for example, and that's great.
Yep.
So that, for example, if you're feeding, say, a more vegetarian meal, just for example, then that gives the kidneys a rest from the protein and the phosphorus. And so it's important, I believe, to actually stress the body in this way. And it's not really stressing them. That's probably we don't have any other term, but that sort of stress is good. Thank you. That's the word we're using now. Yeah. I've already used to using that word. It's a lovely word. It's very hard to understand what it means, but it means all of that.
Yeah. Well, you can just
Okay.
You just ask Siri nowadays. Just ask Siri what hormesis means.
Oh, I do that all the time.
Right. But you guys don't have to comment on this, Josh, Lee, and Karen, but people I've talked to a lot of people that run really beautiful pet food operations that are serving animals beautifully. They feed for anybody watching, these folks have to do this according to AFCO standards so that they can sell their food and be successful and they can help animals. But they also in their private lives, you don't have to comment, but in their private lives, maybe you do, maybe you don't. They'll throw extra chicken backs or tripe or extra organ or this or that. They're not worried as much about this whole complete balance, but they want to produce a product that can go out and be approved by the government agencies, and they'll just get off their backs so that they can do their job and serve animals. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Absolutely. If you're cutting up a chicken for dinner, you toss the dog at the tips or, the necks or something, that's what
That's
they
not
want.
complete and balanced. Karen, what are you doing?
The dogs are happy as Thanksgiving because all the relatives want to keep feeding your dog to make friends to be with your dog.
And they're getting some
Totally.
cooked turkey. That's not going to hurt them because it's not raw. It's it's all good.
Well, so we actually, so to kind of speak to that a little bit too, Rob. So we've come out with a prey model raw line of product as well, because you recognize people want to put in some of their own, toppers, some of their own fruits, some of their own veggies. So, let them do that, right? They want to, each dog is kind of a little bit different, a little bit specific. And so while we're kind of tied into this box, this AFCO box from, a little bit, so to speak, on our AFCO products, we wanted to offer people some variety so that they could, add in their own, toppers and treats and the things that they would like to do that. So give them kind of just the base, shell of the diet through a prey model raw 80-10-10, 80-10-5-5-ish. Product, and then let them do that. So, recognizing that that's what folks are probably doing at home anyway, we want to offer that as a product line as well.
Well, the only thing that you have to do is educate them to know that 80-10-10 and 80-10-5, whatever that model is. A lot of people think that that's it. They can't go outside that. They think that this is written in stone, and as long as you educate them to know, hey, this is just what I have to give you for legal reasons, because that's the legality is the need to satisfy the AVCO people for whatever reason, and without going into it, but that they can actually step outside those boundaries without feeling too awful.
Yes.
Yeah. And, just like people, everybody needs a different kind of diet, and you just have to work with it. You may find that, this particular recipe, maybe your dog gets a little constipated. And so you alternate it, or you throw a little pumpkin in or something. And so every dog's going to be a little bit different. You just feed them what is working best for that dog.
Absolutely. And this is where education comes in, that they understand what each component of the diet is, that A, it's food, and B, it can be varied around. But they just have to think what a dog in the wild would do, and know that a dog in the wild does not have a spreadsheet and does not have a computer and is not looking to AVCO to see what it should be eating. It's
Right.
looking to its instinct, it's looking to what's available. And a dog, see, this 80-10-10 thing takes a total, it's probably close to what a cat requires, because they're obligate carnivores and they do happen to eat whole animals, but not all the time. Even a cat will decide, well, I'm not going to eat that bit, I want to eat this bit. So that rules out the 80-10-10. But the dog is a scavenger. And as a scavenger, he, she, it, we can go with all of those with dogs these days, always could, because we take their gonads out. But he, she, it can, or is actually designed to eat lots of bones. And also, we can throw in something else. Our dogs are also designed to eat things like garbage and poo and rotten food.
Yeah.
Because and they have a digestive system. Yes, it's got acid in the first part, and then it's got this incredible immune system built on immunoglobulin A, which is an immunoglobulin that sits in all the mucous membranes. So those are the protective areas on our eyes, our genitourinary tracts, throughout our digestive tract, that are specifically designed to interface. And I like that word. I think you brought it up earlier, Josh, that word interface, but interface with all the organisms that come through, who are part of our microbiome, who are part of us, who are part of our dog, and we can't live without them. And they're our friends, and the immune system, which is part of this immunoglobulin A, and it's actually part of the innate system, is the acid in the stomach, of course, all of that is designed to live in harmony with our friends, the microbes. And even Salmonella, E. coli, Listeria, Campylobacter, they're our friends. They have to be there so that the immune system says, oh, I recognize you. Now you just stay quiet in there, do your little thing. And I know you're doing some good things. We don't know exactly what they are just yet, but we'll find out in due course. But I will stamp on you if you try and get too rowdy and try to take over. And this is the role of our immune system, to live happily with all those organisms. It only gets warlike if one of those organisms starts to play up.
And that's why I was impressed when I started reading about your Gussy's gut. I think your Gussy's gut accomplishes many of those things that you just discussed.
Yeah,
exactly right. Yes.
What we try to do is we try to take a optimized, clean approach to the poop part that Dr. B talked about, the caprophagic part, the dead, dying, decaying food that dogs like to eat. And we just made it really optimized so that the nutrients are insane. If you could eat the best, if your dog could eat the best poop imaginable, what would they eat? What would they be eating? I mean, that's just what we're in that business. We're in
and I completely agree with you. My first hunting dog I ever had was a chocolate lab, and he would eat anything and everything out in the field. And I never minded. And my English Springer Spaniel, her problem is not only did she like to eat the feces, of course they like to roll it and bring it back to the house. So
of course they do.
They eat it than roll in it, but you can't change the dog's nature.
We had a beagle who loved to eat poop. She'd come in and eat you could tell she'd eaten frozen poopsicles out there. But once we started feeding her raw dog food, she really stopped doing that.
Yeah.
Well, which told you something about the importance of leaving and I know there's rules about this now, which are not good rules. It tells you the importance of leaving the microbes in there in the raw food, because once she was getting it from the raw food, she didn't need quite as much from the poopsicles.
Yeah.
But what you're doing is, we get that all the time. We're told people by our customers that their dogs aren't eating poop, or they're not eating even grass. So they're getting a need met. But enough about us. Thank you for that comment. I appreciate that, Lee. I feed something very similar to your product that's local to me. It's right here. I can just go pick it up. But I looked at your product, and I'm not interested anymore in taking a cleaver. When I first met Dr. Billinghurst 24 years ago now, I bought a cleaver. I was hacking up turkeys. I was doing all this stuff. And my dog was, I pinned my dog in the kitchen. His name was Buddy. And I let him drag that carcass, the piece of a carcass from a turkey all over. Then I had to clean the whole floor. It was just a whole, I mean, those days are behind me. So I like a good grind, really good grind with bone in it. I love that. And I'll do some other things, I'll add some things to his diet in the bowl. But I like this idea of like what you guys have is you've got this tripe. It's green tripe. You've got the kefir, right? It's kefir, right? Goat's milk. Goat's milk. Okay. Very similar.
Fantastic.
And it's raw.
It's raw, completely raw.
Yeah. And the goat's milk, for a lot of people who are concerned about lactose for their dogs, that's a concern for some people. It's not nearly the same. And it's really nice to be able to mix in with your food.
Yeah, and there's more to that goat's milk too. If you speak to read, listen, hear, talk to Dr. Gundry in the United States, he will tell you about lectins and the importance of things like goat's milk, as opposed to, say, cow's milk, sheep's milk, buffalo milk, all of these less cow-like, or if you are using cow, make sure it's got the A2 type of protein, casein in it. And the more we learn about that, and again, what he's talking about is things that actually fit in with our evolutionary background, and that includes our dogs, of course. So this concept is gradually coming through, and I love to read his books because he is in charge of that for humans. he's taking this concept of evolutionary background in his work and putting it through to humans and having tremendous results based on that. And he's looking at ways to make the food more in tune with what we've eaten over evolutionary time. That's what it's all about. And once you understand those principles, which I think it's very hard to get into our head in this modern age, then everything falls into place and becomes very, very simple.
Yeah. All right, Josh, you're getting the floor now. We've been just stealing all the show.
No. So, I mean, what I was going to say is for us, I know that, the first question we kind of address when we're looking at, potentially launching a new product or changing an ingredient is I think the theme we're kind of touching on here is what were they designed to eat, right?
Yeah.
So for us, and you talk about education, and I think, a large part of what we've been doing is trying to create content that we can give to our distributors, to give to our customers, to teach them a little bit about dog biology and the why. Why should they be not eating carbohydrates or just getting a very small amount of simple carbohydrates through something like a natural fruit source? And so for us, that's always kind of the first question we ask ourselves. And then the second one is typically, does it fit into our, mission statement of increasing collective dog longevity? Is there something about this particular ingredient that we think could help a dog that's experienced chronic inflammation because they're eating a high starch diet? So, we love something like coenzyme Q10 in heart meat, for example, 3 to 4 times the amount from other protein sources, pretty potent anti-inflammatory. One thing we loved about the cranberries in the Albright's original recipes is the high polyphenol content. Again, a very, potent anti-inflammatory. And so those two questions, I think, are the two things we always ask ourselves when introducing any kind of product. And that's why I'd say for us with goat milk, for example, let's go with the raw version of goat milk. That's, what we think the dog was designed to eat. We also think that it'll help us meet our, mission statement of increasing collective dog longevity if people are putting that on top of some of the food. So
that's great.
Fantastic.
Josh, I love the mission statement. I might borrow it if you don't mind. I've been looking for something like that I like this idea of, what'd you say, 100,000 hours years?
100,000 years. And that's, I guess I'll preface that with, that's a starting point. We'd like to move that into a seventh digit.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you can do that. I mean, it's this, we're not talking, feeding food like yours is just adding 2 years. I mean, you could be adding 3, 4, 5 years and making the healthcare journey much cheaper and much less emotional for pet owners on the back end. What we never like to talk about the death. I'm not talking about us. I'm talking about people. Is the journey, the health span with lifespan. What I think we all want for ourselves, for our loved ones, for our animals, human and animal, is you want to. There's a term that doctors use called squaring the curve. Instead of this long, horrible descent into death, just boom, straight down, dead, And so maybe a dog lives to 14, 15, 16, 20, boom, done. So that's what I want for my dog. I'm on the record as saying that's what I want for my dog. I know I'm going to lose my dogs at some point. It's a matter of how, and I want to be in charge as much as I can of how that goes. One last thing about ancestral. Well, I'll bring that back up in a little bit. But how did this recipe first start? About with the cranberries and all that. Lee, you haven't had a chance to talk. Lee, you tell me about your recipes and how you created that.
Well, first thing I'd like to say, we're glad we brought Joe and Josh on, because not only did I study it, Josh, as you can tell from the conversation, has taken it to the next level. He's introduced me to concepts I didn't understand, as the doctor here has also. So there's a lot of things I didn't know. I guess what I did was basically is I decided what a dog needed nutritionally. There's probably a list of 30 some proteins, fats, vitamins, and minerals that a dog needed. So I made a list. I made a chart. Here's on one side of the chart was a list of things that I needed. Then the other side of the chart is where I could find those items. So what I did was very simple, and it's not. It took a lot of time. It took a lot of testing. It took a lot of money. Trust me, it took a lot of money to get everything where I wanted it to be with all the testing and government regulations. But when I was done, I was confident that I could meet a dog's nutritional standards
you've mentioned
as I understood them.
You've mentioned that, you know, we have to meet AFCO to be able to sell that as a commercial product. And that was a starting point, but we always recognized that that was not the final say, you know, that when you got those certain calcium levels, the phosphorus levels, all that other stuff was following when you were feeding that real food to the dogs.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is just to get it out the door, to meet some basic needs.
Yeah.
But you know what they've done in AFCO, it's the American Animal, what is that, feed
Control.
Yeah.
American Association of Feed Control Officials.
That's it.
Yeah. So, you know, this is the paradigm of kibble. It's a mentality of like, that's what kibble is proclaimed they've done forever, which is creating this, you know, we're meeting all the nutritional needs of a dog. And so what they've done is they've required us great, you know, raw feeders. They've required that in us in order to sell it. But you can change it up. And, you know, I think you guys have been clear that, you know, you can add things to it and modify it when you get it at your home.
Yeah, and I think another thing that we looked into, and I know that I really liked when we first started talking with me and Karen, was, I think it's there's a Chinese proverb of some kind that says, "Let food be thy medicine," as well, right?
Socrates.
Socrates. So I think, you know, to me that that idea, I think, was, you know, kind of bred into the food that they designed too, right? Again, I think some of this, you know, I always think of a dog that moves from, you know, a high starchy diet over to our food and the differences that our customers see in a very short period of time. And we've had some friends that we've given the food to, and the dog is, you know, they're carrying it up and down the stairs because the joints are going out on it. You know, it seems to be living this very low quality of lifestyle, which I think you're kind of hitting on there, Rob, where, hey, we don't want, you know, we want to extend the life of these dogs. We also want to improve their quality of life through good nutrition. And so, you know, we've seen these kind of, they used to be anecdotal, but now we're getting them almost every day, every week. The improvement in the quality of life of this animal. Now it's this dog that was being carried up the stairs is running by itself up and down the stairs because the joint health has returned. You know, some of these skin ailments or, you know, allergy problems that the dog seems to be having have completely subsided after eating our food. You know, and I just think that that's, again, you know, speaks to that let food be thy medicine, where you're giving the dog what they're designed to eat, what they're supposed to eat. And the transformation that we see is just, you know, absolutely incredible. And, you know, it's what drives us every day, you know, as a business, is to see that happen in our pets. It's so meaningful for us, and to know that we've injected, you know, some greater joy in that dog's life and in that relationship between the pet and the pet parent. And that's really what drives us as a business.
We saw that very early from the get-go. We were making it. We had it, you know, in just small little chubs. We were keeping frozen in the store. And Lee and I were having these conversations with people that came in, with pet owners. They've got a Mastiff that had terrible skin conditions, whatever. And so it was very personal to us because we're dog lovers. They were dog lovers. And to have them come back and tell us what had changed in their dog was wonderful.
Because when you own a meat market, you get to know all your customers.
Yeah.
Everybody walks through the door, you know their names. And these people would come in, they'd see I had raw dog food. I discussed my dog food with them. And I can't tell you how many times we had people with dogs on their deathbed, they're ready to put them down. And it was the last resort. They said, I'll try your food. And a lot of them, I'm not kidding you, dogs that laid on the ground, lost all their hair, wouldn't even get off the floor. Within 3 weeks, they're running around like they're puppies again. Now, it's true. We see it happen so many times, like Josh says. It just gives you such a good feeling, you know.
Right.
They
I'm
can
sure
do
you
this for
two
people.
have the same kind of stories, but it's very heartwarming.
Well,
Great.
can I just jump in there? Josh mentioned a word called anecdotal, which is this, I think the word's pejorative term, a term that's meant to put this whole idea down. But yeah, one or two is anecdotal. But when you see thousands of dogs within a population that change, and we're now seeing hundreds of thousands actually, from this terrible kibble to real food, and their health improves, that food be thy medicine, That's epidemiological. And
Yeah.
that is the soundest science possible to convince anybody that this food is better. Now, you can't do double blind trials with food because there's no way a pet parent can feed a raw food and say, oh, well, that's exactly the same. I don't know what I'm feeding to kibble. You can't do that sort of science. The science that we look at and the most beneficial is epidemiological. And we are seeing that in absolutely container loads around the world, that sort of evidence. Of course we are. And our vets, our veterinary profession has to wake up. They have to. This is the most powerful tool they could have. If they could bottle what they're seeing here and put it in a pill, it would be a miracle.
Yeah.
Well, this is a miracle.
What,
And we
first
have
of
to
all,
take advantage of it.
I just want to correct myself first. I think I said Socrates. I meant Hippocrates is let food be thy medicine. But there's another saying, Josh, that I like a lot, and I'll probably hack it up, but it's in homeopathic medicine. Dr. Nick Thompson brought this up to me. Is there's a saying, I think it is, Dr. B, let me know if I'm wrong about this, if you know it. Remove barriers to cure. So they believe in removing the barriers to the cure. Yeah,
That's a homeopathic thing. Yep.
homeopathic. And in this case, in this conversation, the barrier is processed food. So, if you can allow your animals to be healthy with a species appropriate, raw, good quality diet, you don't have to go to the, I don't go to the vet for these weird problems. I don't have these strange issues. I never have. So when I hear these issues, and we get customers that are trying to plug up, put a plug in a problem and, Band-Aid a problem.
Yeah.
And the first thing we say is, before you buy our product, please buy a good quality, raw, real food at least, but, raw food preferable diet. Feed your dogs quality nutrition, because it all starts there. We're not interested in selling our product as a cure to the ills of kibble. We're not interested in, trying to sell. There are companies that do that, which is like, feed the kibble, put this green powder on your product, and you bring the kibble to life. That's not how this works. We're here to add extra benefit to a really great diet. And then I just want to say something to Lee's, and Josh, you brought up the polyphenols in the cranberries. I believe that we're going to look back in 10 years at what we thought of as the biome, microbiome, and healing the gut and treating gut with probiotics. I think we're going to find that the unsung heroes are actually in the terrain health of our guts. And most of that has to do with polyphenols and phytochemicals. So if you pay attention to our company, we actually underplay probiotics. We don't want to be in a probiotic category. What we want to do is be in the enzyme business, the polyphenol, phytochemical, terpene, fatty acids, all the things that the fermentation brings out in these ingredients that we chose. That's the business we want to be in, because that's the real benefit is in the environment of the gut. And because animals are just not getting everything they need, and then there's medications put on top of that, and other treatments that we don't need to go into, what we're providing is we're in the same business as you, which is a really good gut terrain.
Yeah, I mean, to me, something I've always kind of found fascinating. There's kind of a twofold point here, I guess, but I think Dr. Billinghurst is talking about how reactionary we are in the world of medicine, both for humans and also for pets. It's not preventative. It's not eat a healthy diet, get good exercise to keep yourself from getting sick. It's okay, you're sick because you're eating all these terrible things. Let's give a pill to that. And I think to your point too, there's been so many earth-shattering discoveries about the gut-brain connection in people and how important a healthy gut is. I mean, to me, I was floored when I heard that 90% of your serotonin is produced in your stomach. I mean, I thought, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I had no idea, And so I think the more we discover about that, the more you're right about these enzymes in a healthy gut microbial environment is going to be so critical to just general health. And I think hopefully it'll lead the way to more of this preventative type, medicine, where we're not you're giving someone a pill that then causes, 4 new issues and 4 new symptoms, right? I'm really excited to see. I don't know if you probably saw this study that Dogs First is doing, where they're going to look through, thousands and thousands of pet records at vet clinics to see who visited the vet more, dogs that were eating a real food diet, barf diet, versus dogs that are, eating a kibble diet. And I can't wait to see, the results from that. I mean, I think we all kind of know, how that'll, flesh out. But I mean, I think that kind of more research needs to be done. We've always wanted to try to quantify, to say, hey, how do we quantify? How do we tell people that, yes, the food is a little more expensive than kibble. It's something we'll never probably be able to compete with. But, what kind of vet bills are you experiencing because your dog isn't eating real food? How much money you're having to spend on, prescriptions every week for this poor pup that's, not only, having to, take medicine, but is living a pretty poor quality of life, when you can reverse all that with real food. So I can't wait till that study comes out. We helped, fund that study. Very excited to see the results of that. And I think, again, I mean, to your point, I think, moving into the future, I think a healthy, gut is going to tell us a lot about, the health of our animals.
And like Dr. Billinghurst pointed out, was, the vets need to wake up, because personally, I got tired of going to my veterinarian, and there was a vet office full of dogs that had cancer, had ear problems, had skin problems.
Ours was one of them before we started making
and,
there was nothing they could
do. And the vet would say, well, don't feed raw. When his whole lobby's full of sick dogs. My dogs don't have any of those things wrong with it. So go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, well, to that point, I was just listening to Josh speak, and I know Connor's doing this. And of course, when he brings the results out, the veterinary industry is going to be appalled, because this is going to totally destroy the veterinary industry from their perspective. So they're going to knuckle down harder and sell more dry dog food. Now, that's being very cynical. One would hope, because the current foundation of the veterinary industry is dry dog food. That supports our vets. They have this waiting room full of people who are ready to spend money on diagnostic tests, which are expensive, more of the food that causes the problem, and then the treatment that they're going to have, whether it's chemotherapy or some non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug for the arthritis. This industry is supported by dry dog food. So what we would hope that once this comes out, and the veterinary industry really looks at it from a scientific point of view, changes the way they practice veterinary medicine. Because if they can now make preventative medicine truly preventative by recommending real food, then their whole modus operandi will be one of getting dogs in and just checking them, have a base picture of their blood pictures, that maybe even some radiographs, and moving on from there through life, and understanding then, starting to look at what you were talking about there, Josh, about you're thinking about developing life stage products as animals go into old age. Now that's the finer tweaking, and it's this gets into the prescription area, not the prescription of drugs, but the prescription of food proportions and types of foods. So this is where veterinary medicine needs to go. People like yourself need to lead the way here. We need to be educating the profession, because we have this powerful tool. And in Australia, young vets are leaving the profession. Some are leaving life. They're committing suicide. I believe part of that is because they go into veterinary science with this desire to help animals. And the very thing that is causing the problems, they have not been taught to remove this obstacle to cure. They haven't been taught that. And what they've been taught is these Band-Aid solutions. Yes, go ahead, Rob.
Well, you're right. And they go into the profession to not only help, but to solve problems. They're problem solvers, they're investigators. And when they find out that they have just a stamp, they have a chart, and it says, if this, do this, and there's a stamp to, write a script out, and they see these animals not getting better, they keep coming back. These people are distraught, and Lee, you brought,
for them. Yeah.
yeah. And, Lee, you and Karen, you brought up this great example of the ears and the chronic, itises, all these horrible things. These are the really big problems, because I was just reading a paper today about like an animal with chronic ear problems, for example. There's tremendous damage over time in all areas systematically of the body for being under constant inflammation and irritation. It's horrible for an animal. So you've got this horrible horrible health span, the quality of their health span, and then the lifespan is at risk, because they're under these constant infections. And by the way, that's no good for any person or animal to have constant infections ever, ever, ever. It could be these fungal, could be bacterial, could be, you name it. So all this is, you're so right. I would love to see a world where and we have vets like this, where, they're helping people keep their animals well. And there's an occasional surgery you have to do. And we do such a great job of that in the Western world. Your dog swallows something, and guess what? You got to go in, but these
think corn cob.
Right. Yeah. These overprescribing of things, what led me to Dr. Billinghurst, just real quick, is my dog, as a puppy, when I got him 24 years ago, he had crazy chronic itching. Turns out I didn't know a thing about anything. It was mites. He had been bathed before I got him home. And so the fourth vet that I fired, I had 4 vets right after the other, literally within 1 to 2 weeks of each other. The fourth one told me he might just have to be on steroids his whole life. And I didn't know a thing, but I knew that didn't make any sense. So I ended up finding Marty Goldstein, Dr. Marty Goldstein, and Bob Goldstein, his brother. They worked with me, and they led me to Dr. Billinghurst. And I saw a clear up in 4 weeks. So when you talk about your customers at the butcher, Lee and Karen, it doesn't take that long. You start feeding this stuff, and in weeks, I had a sick dog, and in 4 weeks, I was like, what is going on here? This is some miracle stuff here. It's remarkable.
I had a lady that used to work for me. This was just about a year ago, Josh. Lady that worked for me, she said she had a $1,500 cat, and it wouldn't get off the ground, and it wouldn't do anything. And she'd been to all these series of vets, and she'd tried all these different recipes. She tried all these different medicines. Nothing would get her cat moving again. She'd afraid her cat was going to die. 2 weeks on my food, cat was back to normal. So I'm not going to go on about that, but it happens all the time.
Well, you can have a $1,500 cat, you can have a $5 cat, and it's going to be awesome on the right food.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, and even, there's even this like aging dog recipe, right? I mean, I just don't understand why, more things like, a beef trachea, for example, that has a high concentration of glucosamine and chondroitin. If a dog's having joint problems, why that isn't used instead of some of these other, pills and that kind of thing. Right. So my hope is that those things, then the food becomes the medicine. And that's really, our approach with this kind of life stage line is, hey, a dog needs what a dog needs, and I think that, most closely follows the ancestral, biologically appropriate diet. But I think there are small tweaks that you can make to optimize the nutrition for, a growing animal, an aging animal, a high performance animal. I mean, you look at, dogs in the Iditarod, for example, and the, kind of diet that they eat because they're high performance, in the cold, burning lots of energy, the kind of diet that they're eating, And so for us, I mean, we ask these questions to ourselves, but then we also, look at, hey, do dogs eat these things, or wolves or dingoes? Do they eat these things in the wild, And I've got a picture of I think a coyote or something eating, cranberries off of a tree. And so I'm like, okay, see, that's validation for me to know that there's, an animal in the same family, eating, some type of fruit, or you see a wolf in the, Arctic eating kelp off the seashore, say, hey, see, okay, so I really like that we have kelp powder in here because look, this is something that they would eat in the wild, something that we've observed them eating in the wild. So I think it belongs in our food. And so that's kind of the approach. That's, and then the life stage stuff again is, I think, again, kind of touching to what you say is, improvement, for dogs who, because of their genetics or because of their genetic ceiling or their, genetic potential, now might need something a little extra.
Yeah.
We had a dog once, her name was Molly, this is years ago. And when it was fruit season, she'd go into our orchard and she would just graze off all the fallen fruit. And this became, for probably a month or two, or while that fruit was dropping, that was a major part of her diet. And she'd pop out all these stones. It was a lot of plums, but boy, she was full of activity. Her joints were perfect. She was just eating real food, and it was her instinct. She said, I know. She was a Rottweiler. Said, I know I need this, and that's what she did. It was beautiful.
Yep.
That's exactly right.
That's great. Well, you guys, we've hit an hour. It's flown by, and so we've got you three. Let's go through some parting last thoughts, and let's wrap it up with some parting thoughts. Should we start with you, Lee and Karen?
Sure. One thing I'd like to say is, like we pointed out, there's no one cure for all dogs. I think everybody would agree in this group is we haven't fixed every dog in the world, nor can we. You need to look at your dog. What does your dog need? And also, it's a science in progress. We're all learning as we go. So 10 years from now, we might have slightly different opinions. So
But it starts with that real food.
everybody should just do the best they can to take care of their dog. Karen?
Yeah, it starts with real food. Like you said, we may, find out that you need a little bit of this, and we'll figure that out as we go along. But we're doing what we want to do to make those dogs live longer, better lives.
Good for you. Great. Josh.
Yeah, I think, when I look at dogs historically, we've had a pretty rough 50 to 60 years. Dogs have had a really pretty, tough time. The life expectancy, some of the health ailments they've experienced, I think, because of poor nutrition. But I think there's hope for the future. I really like a lot of the work coming out of University of Helsinki and some of the studies they're doing for dogs. I really like, obviously, for me, this was a big thrill to meet you, Dr. Billinghurst. I mean, kind of a celebrity in the space and someone who really, embarked us on this raw feeding journey to give dogs real food. So I think some of these things, Gussy Gut is another, I think, fine example of how, we can do this, 1, 10, 100 dogs at a time. I think the future is really bright for our animals with, products like yours. And I think with real food products like ours. And I'm excited to see what impact we make on dogs in the next 50 to 60 years.
Josh, your goal of 100,000 more years of good life for dog. I think Dr. Billinghurst has already done that.
Tenfold that. Yep.
Exactly. And we appreciate that.
Well, I'll just say something off of both of you. First of all, good on you for, Lee and Karen, what you said, your last words, I think are perfect. And it occurs to me what we're both in the business of doing, all of us here, is all we're really trying to do is make nature, we're mimicking nature, and we're trying to make it a little bit more convenient. Mm-hmm. And because none of us are going to go out and let our dogs go catch or find prey and go kill it and bring it up. I mean, it's too much. Like, I have a job, So, what we're trying to do is bring nature in, and we recognize that the healthiest dogs, these dogs that are living 20 plus years, good quality years, these so-called Guinness Book of World Records winners and all these, famous stories we hear, they're all living on ranches. They're all eating chicken poop and animal poop and wild prey. And, they're coming in, they're getting scraps from the people. They're getting, chunks of meat and this and that. They're getting a whole huge variety, but they're outside. So we're trying to do is bring the outside in for everybody.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. All right, Dr. B.
Well, I'm hearing, country life, it's fabulous, isn't it? Because they're getting all that wonderful food and they're grounding, they're touching the earth, and they're getting exercise.
Yep.
And they're getting exercise out where they can breathe in the air, and it's just absolutely fabulous. Now, we can't reproduce all of that for our dogs. We certainly can change the food. And the first thing, I love what you said about what Nick Thompson said, the first thing we have to do is remove that obstacle to cure. And that is remove that terrible food, that fake industrial food, that poison chalice, I call it now. It's politically correct to feed it, but it's a poison chalice. That's the PC. Remove it. And then, yes, throw in some real food. As soon as you do that, you're going to see a difference. And even with AFCO and their whatever ratios and whatever they prescribe, if you're following real food, it doesn't really matter because the body doesn't care a hoot about what AFCO said. It just says, thank goodness, real food. Okay, it's got AFCO proportions. They've probably screwed some things up here, but it doesn't matter. I've got real food and I can take what I need from this. And that's the way it goes. Real food.
Yes.
Remove that obstacle.
All right. Well, on that note, thanks everybody. Josh, Lee, Karen from Albright's. Thank you very much for being with us. And just go, everybody, Albright's rawdogfood.com. And thanks again. It was really great talking to you guys.
Thank you.
Indeed.
We appreciate your time, and it was educational for me also today. So thank you for that.
We appreciate yours. You inspired us.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.